Hey guys, what's up? It's Jay. We're back again with another top 10 list of fun horror topics. Now, this time we're going to talk about our favorite bad sequels. That's right, we're talking about an oxymoron here. They were bad, but they were so bad that we loved them or we still remember them for some reason. And so let's get into our top 10. You guys can give me your favorites, and maybe I missed some. And I'm real bad about putting stuff that happened within my lifetime in. And that's kind of what I did here. This is a lot of my favorites. And so let's get started. All right. I had some honorable mentions. First off, I had A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which a lot of people call a bad movie, which I don't really understand that. I think the movie's solid. It's the first Freddy movie I saw as a kid. My dad actually brought home a box of videotapes he bought from somebody, and it just happened to be in there, and it was in the case of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So I remember, like, I found it, and I was like, keep that to myself, because they didn't want me to watch, they let me watch Frankenstein and stuff, but not Freddy, not at that age. And so I waited for everybody to go to bed or leave or whatever, and I put the movie in and watched Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. A lot of people hate the movie. I know a lot of people think it's, it has a lot of latent homosexuality to it. I don't know. I didn't get any of that stuff when I was a kid, guys. Maybe I just missed it. Maybe it was over my head because I have seen people talk about it now, but who cares anyway, right? Whatever. The story was good. I liked it. Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Another one I had was the Exorcist prequels. These are pretty good, bad sequels, I thought, even though they're actually prequels. And what's interesting about those is the Exorcist, the beginning, and then there was another movie called Dominion, the prequel to The Exorcist. They both came out at the same time, and they were both made by the same people, and they both had the same actors in them. And the reason why is because they hired a director to make the Exorcist prequel, and basically what he came up with was Dominion, the prequel to The Exorcist. And the studio watched it, and they were like, not Exorcist-y enough. It's not scary enough. We need more effects. We need more. It's at the same time that, like, The Ring and stuff like that was big when they made these, so they wanted that. And so what they did was they kept a lot of the sets. They rewrote a little, probably 40% of the script, called the actors back in, and reshot the rest of the movie with, adding a little bit of what they already had. And so there were two movies. They were both out at the same time, I remember, because I went to see one at a big theater in St. Louis. Exorcist, the beginning, was the one that they really pushed. And then I went and saw Dominion at a much smaller theater in St. Louis. I actually kind of like Dominion more. It's a little more subtle. It's less over the top. But neither here nor there. They were both pretty good bad sequels, in my opinion. Also on the honorable mentions list, I have Sleepaway Camp 3. You can't go wrong with Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3. They're fun. They're campy. Pardon the pun. And honestly, by the time we get to 3, there's a reason why I put 3 and not 2. By the time you get to 3, we know there's no imagination to the story anymore. There is no more twist to the story or who it might be. It's Angela, and she's nuts. And the only intrigue in the story now is how far will Angela go, right? So Sleepaway Camp 3, another one of my favorites. And the last one I had in the honorable mentions was Friday the 13th Part 5. And I do have an appreciation for this movie for what I feel like they tried to accomplish and failed at. Now, look. The first Friday the 13th, nobody knows who the killer is. If you go into that movie in 1980 when it came out, you don't know who the killer is. They're leading you to believe it might be this legendary kid named Jason, but it turns out to be the mother, right? Spoiler alert. Probably should have said that. But if you haven't seen that, you're probably not watching this. But anyway, so then we get to 5, and what did they come up with? A new beginning. Has to be a new beginning because we did the final chapter. So what are we going to do here? We're going to make a movie similar to the first one, where we throw everyone off. Everyone thinks it's Jason, but it's not. It's someone else. Unfortunately, they did a terrible job at setting this up. There are some hilarious shots in this movie. The killer turns out to be Roy, I believe is his name, the EMT whose son gets killed at the camp in the beginning. So he kind of takes on the Jason mantra to throw everybody off and starts killing the kids who apparently it's all their fault and not his for letting this kid end up there when he apparently lived around there and had a decent job. I don't get that. But anyway, yeah, so early on, there are some weird shots in the movie where they're like, the cop says, well, blah, 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 it could have been this who done it. And then Roy goes, was you talking to me? And the cop goes, no, Roy, nobody talking to you. And there's just a shot on this dude's face. It looks a lot like Lou Ferrigno. I don't remember the actress name. But, and you're just like, that's so stupid. I mean, like, they gave it away every inch of the way. And the effects were decent again because it was a Friday the 13th movie. What they didn't cut and throw in a dumpster was pretty decent for this one. But everyone, hates this movie because it doesn't have Jason in it. But in my opinion, I see what they were trying to do. I appreciate it. They were going for the mystery again, like they had in part 1, where no one knew who Jason was, or knew who the killer was, I should say. Moving on to my top 10 list, guys. I'm going to keep going here. At number 10, I have a favorite of mine. It's absolutely terrible. It's called King Kong Lives from 1986. If you heard me talk the other day, you know I like the King Kong movie from the late 70s with Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange. This one kind of like half-ass sequels that. It doesn't ever actually say it's straight up, because it never says what happened to the other characters. It just picks up at the end of the classic story where Kong falls from the Empire State Building. He lands on the ground. But in this one, Kong didn't die. And so what is the premise of this story? Well, they decide to build an artificial heart for King Kong. And this couldn't go wrong, possibly, right? I mean, it's such a great logic-proof plot, right? Love it. It's got Linda Hamilton in it, who had done Terminator before this. And I guess that was their attempt at getting a star instead of going, they kind of just scrapped the Bridges and Lang thing. They didn't tell that story anymore. So let's move on to another star. Linda Hamilton was kind of big at the time, so you think it would have worked. It's a fun, like, adventure type film if you just throw away the insane logic of why they would build an artificial heart for this ape that will probably kill all of them if it had the chance. But anyway, moving on. At number 9, I have Child's Play 3 from 1991. I like Child's Play 3. I liked it a lot when it came out in 91 because at this point, Chucky's kind of fallen into the Freddy thing where he's not just evil anymore. He's also a stand-up comedian. He cracks a lot of jokes and, says stuff that's off the wall that dolls wouldn't say. That's what makes Chucky fun. And that's why kids love Chucky, because ultimately Chucky never hurts the kids, right? Well, in this one, I guess Chucky got a little too close to hurting the kid. There was a big deal about Child's Play 3. Some kids in England... 2, I think, 12-year-old boys killed a much younger boy. They might have been younger than that themselves. And they kind of, like, terrorized him, tortured him, beat him up on the railroad tracks. And everyone attributed it to this film because of a scene in this film that's why they did that to the boy. They had seen the movie. Apparently, it was at their house or something. They had rented it, and they got the idea to do this to him from a scene in the movie. But they went far beyond even the scene in the movie. It was terrible. And so the movie got a pretty hard rap and didn't even get released in a lot of places. It did get released here in the U.S. because they knew it would make money here and the controversy wasn't as big. But it was pretty quick to video, and that's where I saw it when I was a kid. I liked it. I liked Chucky Goes Ballistic. I remember the tagline, Chucky Goes to Camp, if you could imagine that in a sense. It's military school. But basically provides Chucky with a large amount of victims. And I think the reason why kids love Chucky, everybody's like, kids should be scared of Chucky. Chucky fucks up adults. Chucky is the small guy who will go after the adults and kick their ass. I think kids like that about Chucky secretly, and I think they're not nearly as scared of him as they might be some other monsters because of that. Next on my list, guys, I got Hellraiser. We got to talk about this though, right? I got Hellraiser. But this is a pretty interchangeable thing right here. You could put Hellraiser Dreader, you could put Hellraiser Inferno, you could put Hellraiser Judgment. There's a lot you could put here and say it was a pretty good bad sequel. So many, in fact, that if you look at Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth and Hellraiser 4 Bloodline, those start to look like really good horror movies when you get on down the line and you start watching all these movies that were never Hellraiser movies to begin with. They were scripts that somebody wrote that the studio bought and said, hey, we love your script. We'd like to put Pinhead in it and turn it into a Hellraiser movie. And they paid the guy $300,000 and that was it. So they made a bunch of bad sequels. Some of them were better than others, and that's what we're looking for here. And I picked the worst one. I picked the most hated one. I picked Hellraiser Resurrection. And this is probably one of the most hated films I've seen in groups and stuff like that. And I gotta say, I don't hate it as much as everybody else does. It's bad. I'll give you that. The whoever did Pinhead's makeup and all that, that's bad. It's terrible. The guy playing Pinhead is terrible. All that's bad. Okay, I'll give you that. But there is a dirty, nasty little story in this movie that has an underlying storyline going through it that I think is very much Hellraiser. I don't, it surprises me that they bought a story that was this close to the plot line, because there's a lot of these two guys are on vacation in Mexico and things get out of control, and one guy murders a hooker or a girl or whatever, and they start, things are happening similar that have happened in other Hellraiser movies. Their selfishness and stuff allows the demon to come out, right? Now, then there's the second act of the movie where it follows them back home, and that's all weird and stuff, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But I like that first part, and I think there was something there. They blew it, don't get me wrong, but I did like it. And like I said, guys, don't just take Resurrection. There's 5, 10 Hellraiser, 6 at least Hellraiser movies you could throw in there as a good, bad sequel, depending on which one you like. And next I have at number 7, guys, I got The Fly Part 2 from 1989. Nobody remembers this movie, apparently. It was a sequel to the Jeff Goldblum movie, actually. Just doesn't have Jeff Goldblum in it. Doesn't have Gina Davis, of course. It doesn't have David Cronenberg directing it. It was just a studio thing. Fox was like, hey, the movie made money. Let's make more money off of it. You put Eric Stoltz in it, and it basically should be called Son of the Fly, because that's what the story is about. It's an interesting story, though, right? I mean, a lot of people think it's bad because it's kind of a cash grab thing. It's not as good as the original, and they know that. And so you're like, why are they, attempting to put something out? But it is interesting. I like the movie, the idea that the kid grows up in a facility, not understanding what he is, and then how he is ultimately doomed to become, what he is. There's really no way around it. The Fly and The Fly 2, very tragic. It never really works out for anybody. Next I had, at number 6, I have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. It's from 1995. It's pretty terrible. It's also a lot of fun to watch. It's one I find myself in that series going back to watch. I mean, look, guys, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise is probably one of the most fun just because it's so off the wall. I mean, there was no, Toby did the first one. They got Toby to come back and do the second one. What they wanted was like, hey, Freddy and Jason are making a lot of money. Make us some money, Toby. And Toby was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make a movie that's, my last movie didn't have a lot of gore in it, and it was, everybody loved it and, took it seriously. I'm going to make an over-the-top gore fest that's ridiculously funny, and I'm pretty sure the studio hated him for that, even though I love him for it. I love Texas Chainsaw 2. I think it's a great movie, ahead of its time. But anyway, this is Texas Chainsaw: The Next Generation. So now we're on the 4th movie, right? And this is the, I think, 3rd attempt to reboot the franchise already. We've had Texas Chainsaw 3, but I'll talk about that in a minute because it's on here too. I love that one. But this one, the only problem I had with one of the main problems, there's some great actors in the movie, and then they're surrounded by a bunch of really terrible actors. And it's kind of a funny thing when you watch it. I mean, the way that it goes off. You have Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey in this. Both these actors won Oscars for good reason, and you notice them, they stand out, heavily above the rest of the actors, and it's actually pretty funny. One thing I didn't like about it was the design of Leatherface. We've seen Leatherface kind of dress like a woman before, but they kind of just made it really weird this time. I didn't get it. You know what I mean? I didn't get, was he trying to be a woman, or had he made a woman costume, or I didn't get it. It was like a little too much over the top for me to understand what they were going for with it. I don't know. Maybe I just missed it. I didn't like the design of the costume for Leatherface in this one, and it's different for all of them. Now, moving on. At number 5, I have The Stepfather Part 3 from 1992. This is the one where it doesn't have Terry O'Quinn. Terry O'Quinn did The Stepfather, and look, he did that movie, and he's a serious actor. He's a very underrated actor, too, or he, tries to be a very serious actor. And, he thought it was like a psychological thriller. People kind of liked it. It made a little money. It, got a little recognition. So then comes the Stepfather 2, and Terry O'Quinn signs on to do the Stepfather 2. And there's just a lot of trouble. There's a lot of trouble on set. Things don't work out right. The studio's not happy with the movie. And very early on, Terry O'Quinn realizes this was not like a Psycho 2 situation where they're trying to do a really good continuation of the first film. This is a situation where I have now become Freddy Krueger, and they want to see how many of these they can make. You know, he realized it at some point during the filming, and he kind of checked out in the Stepfather 2. And then after the studio saw it, they were mad because he was right. Because when the studio saw it, they were mad there wasn't enough blood in it. And they fired the director, hired another director, and made them all come back for reshoots that were just terrible reshoots. You know, over-the-top blood and guts. It ended up getting cut down, so you wonder why they even went that far with it. They cut it down before the movie came out, but that was it. He was done. He was like, I'm done with Stepfather. That's it. Can't really blame the guy. Stepfather 3, it's not Terry O'Quinn anymore. Now we got a new guy, and he's kind of lame. But the movie is fun in a really terrible, ridiculous way. This guy goes off and, you know, he's trying to live the double lives and all that, and he's a terrible actor. He kind of just looks like somebody you just want to slap the shit out of, you know, because you're like, I'm supposed to be scared of this guy or what, you know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, the Stepfather 3, I still like it though, and it's one of those, like, you know, they used to show it like on USA Up All Night and stuff like that, and it's definitely the worst of that series. I don't know, Stepfather 2 is not great either, and Stepfather 1 I have a couple problems with when I revisited that. There is a weird scene in that movie that I think kind of puts me off about it a little bit. I don't really want to talk about it right now, but anyway, I think if you go back and rewatch the first Stepfather, you might understand what I'm talking about. There's a character in the movie who's like the stepdaughter, right? We're alluded to the fact that she's the stepdaughter, and I don't think they actually say how old she is, but maybe 16 or something like that. And then there's a scene towards the end of the movie where they show her naked in the shower, just taking a shower before she's about to get murdered, or, you know, he's about to try to murder her. And it just comes off really bad. It comes off really, you know, exploitive, and you're like, I don't like it. It just feels icky. It's the only part I really don't like about that movie. You probably shouldn't bring that up right now, but anyway. The Stepfather 3 is what I had at number 5. And at number 4, I got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Yeah, all these Texas Chainsaw movies are fun, guys, because what? They did 1, 2, 3 was kind of like them trying to, you know, New Line Cinema was like, okay, we'll take a crack at it. We'll try to restart everything. That didn't work. You know, 4, what was that? Like Lionsgate or something? Or was it Trimark maybe? I don't remember. But it came out on video. It never made it to the theater. Then you fast forward all the way to 2003 when they made the remake. And then the prequel to the remake. Those are the only two that are even remotely similar. Because then you got 2 more after that are different from each other and different from those. And it's just a crazy franchise. And I love all of them because of that. Texas Chainsaw 3 is a really dark movie, guys. Watch it with all your lights on so you can see everything that's going on. But it's pretty straightforward. It's got Ken Foree in it, you know, a horror legend. This couple, you know, of course, they're in the wrong place at the wrong time and end up on a road, and they're getting started. They had a, you know, altercation at the gas station. Viggo Mortensen is in this one too, guys. Also, I should say. And it's not like his strongest performance, but you can kind of see that he's pretty good in this, even early on. He was in some other stuff too, way before, you know, Lord of the Rings, stuff like Carlito's Way. He had good parts and little stuff, and so he had a pretty decent part in this. And yeah, it's weird to see, like, each time when they do one of these movies, how they put the family together. I think that's another reason why Texas Chainsaw 3D that came out in 2012 is interesting, because you don't get the family, you just get Leatherface, and he's kind of presented as an anti-hero this time instead of, you know, just a straight-up monster that lives with a cannibal family. It was a different take on it. But anyway, so yeah, in 3, this couple, you know, they end up getting run off the road. It's a whole thing in the woods, and, you know, Leatherface is after him. It's pretty bad. It's a lot of cat and mouse. And then, of course, we get to the traditional family scene in the movie. We always get one of those in these movies, except for the one I talked about. And the family's just this hodgepodge of different characters this time. I guess some of them are the same characters, just different actors. And it's not terrible though. I mean, when you rewatch it, there's some fun things about it that are ridiculous. There's a chainsaw fight. Not really a chainsaw fight, but there's a fight between Ken Foray and Leatherface, and they're out in the swamp, like in a bog somewhere out of nowhere. I thought they were in Texas. I guess maybe there's a big boggy area in Texas like that I don't know about. I'm sure there is. But yeah, there's some fun stuff in the movie, and it's just not a bad sequel. And when with these movies, I think individually they're fun to look at like that. Anyway, moving on. At number 3, I got Jaws: The Revenge from 1987. Jaws 4, if you want to call it that. This is the one that just didn't care. It didn't care. This is the title of the movie is The Revenge, right? And it's implied, now we're implying at this point that Jaws is like a character. It's like like the shark's character. It's trying to get revenge on people. Of course, I don't know what, I guess this shark is somehow related to the other shark. And, of course, we're on like our 4th shark by now, maybe 5th shark by the time we get to this movie. You just don't piss off sharks, because they'll come after you and they'll just keep coming. And then you'll get to a point where it's just the revenge. And I remember a thing with Michael Caine where they asked him, the guy was questioning him about the movie and how bad it was. And Michael Caine's kind of like laughing it off, because that was the whole thing. They went out and got Michael Caine. And they're like, look, nobody else wanted to be in this movie, Roy Schreider said no is Schreider? Yeah, said no a long time ago. Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. are out. And so we got to find somebody. So they go out and they pay Michael Caine an absurd amount of money to be in this movie, just to make it like it's the fourth in this series, and it's just a summer movie to make some money. And the guy keeps pressing Michael about the movie, about how bad it is. And he's like, did you see the movie? And Michael says, you know what? Actually, I didn't see the movie. I did see the house it bought in France, though. And I love that quote from him. He's a funny guy. I've seen him on other things. Yeah, that was pretty good. I like Jaws: The Revenge. It's a terrible movie. Barely worth watching, but it's fun. I mean, and Michael Caine gets to just be Michael Caine in this. There's no real character there for him. He's just being Michael Caine, and he's kind of funny. Jaws: The Revenge from 1987. Moving on. One of my favorites in the franchise, but apparently it's a really bad movie. Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Yeah, this movie's a mess. I get it. And a lot of people don't like it because it strays off the path of the original line, which had already strayed from itself. And, I love this movie. And look, here's another thing. You got to realize when you watch this movie, if you haven't seen the producer's cut, you have to watch the regular cut, then there's a producer's cut. Neither one of them are spectacular alone. But if you kind of look at it like there was good stuff in both, there's a great movie there, trust me. And it's got Paul Rudd in it. He's playing Tommy Doyle. He's completely freaking nuts in this. He's kind of a little bit of an adversary for Mike, besides Dr. Loomis. And like I said, there's several different cuts of the movie. The best one is the one where there's the giant fight at the end, and Tommy and Michael fight it out. And Tommy beats his head in with a damn fire extinguisher. And then there's another cut where none of that happens, and Loomis does something to him, blows him up. And then, of course, Donald Pleasance died after this movie, so they kind of tried to write that into the movie, that's how he died. You can look at that as being lame or whatever. But I like The Curse of Michael Myers. I think it really had a good slasher atmosphere. It was shot well, good acting, and I like the story. I mean, there's the other version where Jamie Lloyd is not killed by Michael Myers. She survives that attack, okay? And so then there's a whole different storyline from that. So if you want to watch that version, I recommend you go out and check that one out. But just the straight up theatrical version, I liked it when I was a kid. I liked the way it was cut. I liked the way it was shot. And that's what I remember about it the most, is the production value of the movie. A lot of people complain about the story, and I get that, but I like this one. And let's see what's next. All right. At number 1, guys, I have Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Yes, it's terrible. It's probably the worst it's probably as bad as you could get at that point, right? Okay, first off, we have some kids in a boat, a cruise ship that is on the lake, Crystal Lake. Isn't that where Jason lives? But apparently that lake has a direct route from it to New York Harbor, or some way that a ship can get there. A river maybe that exists between a lake and a. I don't know. I don't know how it happened. It's not possible. But this one's funny. I remember a lot of stuff about this. And what was unusual was this is one of the one I don't know why Paramount did, but they kind of got behind this one a little bit. There was some advertising and stuff for it. I remember because they couldn't get freaky with the trailers on TV because that had been shot down by parents groups. So what they did was they had this great trailer for the movie where Jason was standing on top of a building and you could see like the Empire State Building in the background, and they're playing the dun 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 dun. Yeah, and you're thinking that you had no idea. The first time I saw it, I had no idea what was going on. You could tell it was a movie trailer, because the way it was cut and everything. But they're like, in this blah 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 summer. And then when he turned around, it was Jason. I was like, oh, yes. Because each one of those movies at the end, like 6, 7, 8, you're like, are they going to make another one? Are they going to make another one? And they did. They just kept coming through, right? So, yeah, Part 8 is pretty terrible. I love it. I like the way Part 8 is shot. I like a lot of things about it. It's terrible. The storyline is terrible. The trying to falsely make us care about a character who's never been in this franchise before, but apparently has always lived here, is terrible. I also think that, some of the stuff shot in New York is actually shot in Toronto, so that's not really, it doesn't really capture that, but that's a lot of movies. Let's be fair. How many movies? There's probably been, 500 movies that were set in New York that were shot in Toronto, so you can only hold so much about that against it. I remember King Hodder saying that this was one of his, his highlights in his career was to be, because they actually did, they got Central, or Times Square, they got that area cleared out for a shoot, and he got to stand in the middle of Times Square with all these people standing around screaming, terrified, and he's standing there holding a machete as Jason Voorhees, and he said he could just turn one way, and when he did, everybody would just, even though they knew it was just a movie, that they were shooting a movie. Great, hilarious thing. Some of the kills in the movie are pretty good. Some of them are pretty bad. I like the one where Julius gets his head knocked off, right? You gotta love that one. I always thought that somebody should just turn around and knock the shit out of Jason. That's what my plan would be, because I'm not running. I might as well just bend over. If Jason gets after me, I might as well bend over and kiss my ass goodbye, right? I mean, I'm not the slowest guy in the world, but nobody ever gets away from this dude. So anybody I ever saw that beat the guy came up with a plan or did something quick that was smart. You know what I mean? Nobody ever got away from Jason by running. I've never seen that movie where somebody just took off and the camera followed them for like 40 minutes and they came out to the road and left. Never saw that shot in a Jason movie. So if he does get after you, you kind of just kiss your ass goodbye. You kind of just sign off on whatever's going to happen next. And you take a swing at the motherfucker. Pick something up. Pick up a rock. Tie an anchor around his neck. There's things that work. They're not always practical. You might have to think a little bit. But yeah, that was my favorite, guys. Friday the 13th Part 8. It's a terrible movie. I love it. There's other movies that have been talked about throughout time. I guess Halloween 3 is one that people love and hate. That's why I didn't put anything like that on here. I try to stay away from the ones that are polarizing, where people are like, it's the best, or, it's the worst, or it's the best. Halloween 3 is one of those. Everyone says it's the best or it's the worst. Let me tell you the truth about Halloween 3. It's just average. For that era that it came out, it's a decent little horror movie. And it has like an original idea behind it. It's a little bit lame, the idea that's behind it. But it also, I'm not sure how well it translates. It's not terribly lame, but I'm not sure how well it translates. And that annoying song and all that. I didn't think it was a bad movie. I think it should have just been called Season of the Witch, though, and they should have left Halloween off of it. But the premise being that not Michael Myers is not the only thing that is encapsulated inside Halloween. There are many tricks and evil things encapsulated inside Halloween. And according to John Carpenter, had Halloween 3 been a success, we would have seen further movies that had different stories besides just that story or the one with Michael Myers. So that would have been interesting, but it didn't work out because Halloween 3 tanked. People were mad. Just like with Friday the 13th Part 5, no honey, no money. People get mad. A lot of what happens with genre films, guys, and it's funny. I'd say one of the best examples is you'll look to the Nightmare on Elm Street films, right? All the good films didn't do that great at the box office. All the bad films did better because they would make a good film so everybody would run and pay to see the next one. And then that film would suck. So the next one, like, okay, a lot of people don't like part 2, so a lot of people were upset about part 2, so part 3 didn't make as much as part 4 did because people waited for it to come out on video, and then they saw it and they're like, well, part 3 was great, man. So then they ran out and saw part 4, right? People are iffy on part 4 too, but I like it. I mean, I like pretty much all of them. I think Freddy's Dead is a little bad. I think Dream Child is a little out there. It's not necessarily bad. It's just a little weird with the concept. It's like, there's nowhere to go but Freddy and fatherhood to an extent. I remember that being kind of like a tagline. But anyway, yeah. So that's my top 10, guys. Check out Bill Van Vagel's page. I got Bill tagged on here. You can just click on his name. He's doing his list. Compare your list to ours. We want to hear what you got to say. What are your favorite bad sequels? We've been doing these lists for the last 2 weeks. Go check them out on my page if you want to look at any of the other ones and comment on those. We're going to do our top 10 favorite over-the-top nutcase performances from actors. Just people who went there. And I mean, underrated performances. Like stuff like Alan Alda in Whispers in the Dark. Stuff that you never saw coming. And then all of a sudden you got an actor that's just going for it, right? And we're not talking about like Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. We're not talking about Kathy Bates in Misery. We're talking about, stuff that went deeper than that. Underrated stuff that people may have missed. That's what we're trying to do, is get the movies out there, get the titles out there, get people watching them. We want you to do the same. Make a video. Tell us some of your top 10s. Challenge us to a top 10. Leave some comments here telling us what top 10s you'd like to see us do. Make some videos. Stay inside. Stay safe. We love you guys. And we'll talk to you the next time we got something worth talking about. Bye.